All right, good evening. My name is Stephen Rabinowitz. I'm here with Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait. And about a week ago, about a day ago, it was announced that Gilgeous-Alexander would win the MVP, but it was announced earlier in the morning by Shams Charania after all of a sudden it was supposed to be an exclusive announcement on the Amazon Prime network show that was before Game 7. And Blake Griffin responded in tow to Shams, basically saying, "You nerd, what are you doing doing this early in the morning? Why don't you go and have brunch or something like this?" And Anthony Strait, considering I texted you when that happened, maybe we're the nerds that need to go and have brunch or something around that time.
Yeah, you know what? I used to think Adam Schefter didn't sleep. When he would put out breaking news tweets. Shams, I'm just like, do you not have a life? Who's up that early at 6 in the morning for late breaking news? I mean, look, I would say this. By the way, I'm 48 hours away from a birthday, so I got that
That's
Happy
coming up.
right.
birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. But on top of that, I don't even have a brunch scheduled for my birthday. So I'm like, what is going on? Do you not have anything else going? Like, it's Sunday. You're not
Dude,
even
even
working.
even Woj was not that crazy with staying up till the wee hours of the
Yes,
morning.
it
I mean,
was.
well,
Yes, it
I
was.
mean,
This
look,
was set at
but
9:45 in the morning,
yeah,
but
hey,
this
but
yes,
look,
it was.
I don't. I think Woj though kind of like understood the etiquette of the of things. Where if that was supposed to be an Amazon Prime exclusive breaking news thing, they were going to be given the opportunity to break that. I have a feeling Woj would have been like, all right, I'll let them have it, even if he already beat them to the punch. But Shams is like Schefter to a certain extent, where I think they are way too overly concerned about being first, sometimes at the expense of being right.
He was right
Yeah,
on that one. But
yeah,
by the way, this was
you're
literally
right. He
just an
was.
opening. This
Yeah.
was just literally opening statements. We're not going a whole segment with this.
No.
This is the Sports Lines annual conference finals edition. This week is the conference finals in the National Basketball Association and National Hockey League. Well, kind of. We'll get to that later on. Not the Final Four in college basketball because it's off season. Not the Final Four in college softball because they do a damn college World Series. Not the Final Four in the NFL because, well, you get the idea. We'll talk players who've surprised, hockey stars, hockey goalies, and everything in between the pursuits of Lord Larry O'Brien and Lord Stanley's Chalice as they continue. Like and subscribe more than a final four times at youtube.com and facebook.com/ on the sports lines. Let's go local. Say go New York, go New York, go. As we begin with the NBA, the Eastern Conference Finals are finally set between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the New York Knicks. It's been a whole lot of nothing this week for the New York Knicks as a four-game sweep of, Jay's Philadelphia 76ers sent the newly minted under the luxury tax team packing. Congratulations on that. Oh! And the Knicks waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and they'll have 9 days before game one tomorrow night. In a 7 game, still currently going on winning streak this postseason, which has never happened in the franchise history, not even in 70 and 73, they have achieved their best three playoff scoring outputs ever in that span. 144 points against the Sixers in game four, which only topped the 140 in game six against the Hawks in round one, and 137 that happened in round one against the Sixers. So enough with the Knicks victory lap. We got to get to previewing the conference finals between the two prospective favorites going in to the season in the East. And give me a star watch for the orange and blue as they finally come back to the court tomorrow night.
What a difference does a month make? Think about where Mikal Bridges was just a month ago. Come off a so-so regular season where he had more of a reduced role in Mike Brown's offense. The Hawks they were down 2-1 to the Hawks in the first round of the playoffs, and Mikal Bridges I put up a goose egg and was benched in crunch time during game three. And at nauseum we heard about the Knicks giving away all the draft picks for Bridges and uh yeah, 5 draft picks for Mikal Bridges, and everybody wanted to run him out of town, but what a difference a couple of games make, and certainly he is going to be a key factor against the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are coming off short rest, coming into Madison Garden tomorrow night for game one of that series. The regular season, I told you, he had a reduced role. He only averaged 14 a game, which was down from last year under Tom Thibodeau. We averaged close to 18 a game. And also, but his field goal percentage still remains close to 60% and 37% from three, particularly the corner three. But he struggled mightily in the first round in the first few games of the playoffs. The turning point was definitely the closeout game in Atlanta when he had 23 points and that big spanking 24 points actually 10 or 12 shooting from the field and that was a couple of games after he had a minus 26 and 21 minutes of game three, a game the Knicks actually lost. In the last game, the Knicks has lost since. But one of the things about Mikal Bridges that was overlooked in spite of his offensive struggles was just how good he was on the defensive side of the court in the first and the second round. The first round, he mainly guarded Karl-Alexander Walker, was most improved player, the most improved player award winner for this year, who had averaged 40 points a game, held him to just 13.5 points a game, forcing 9 turnovers. But in round two of this series, ooh, sorry about that. The hockey game is still going on, by the way, so I had to look up for a second.
Same.
But in round two, he drew the majority of the sideline. Tyrese Maxey, who Jay, as you know, Tyrese Maxey is a stud, one of the best players in the league. But he's such a
Sure.
speedster that not too many guys can stay in front of him. Mikal Bridges using his length, being able to keep Maxey in front, which most guys generally don't do. Held to 19 points per game or 38% shooting. Definitely playoff lows across the board and helping the Knicks in that four-game sweep. What he needs to do, obviously, is defensively. You gotta think the Knicks are gonna cross match him on Donovan Mitchell a good portion of this series. Donovan Mitchell's an aggressive point guard we saw in the series against Detroit, particularly Game Seven. Well, Rabbi, I think I texted you if that Donovan Mitchell had to take them home in the second half if they were going to win that Game Seven. He pretty much did take over for the most part, being aggressive, getting to the foul line, being a passer to the big guys, to Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. He's gonna have to slow down Donovan Mitchell, keep him out of the paint as much as possible, but also maybe force Mitchell to be the jump shooter. Mitchell has been kind of up and down as far as his jump shot in the game in this playoff. Particularly, we saw in Game Six when the Pistons able to keep him out of the paint and limit his trips to the foul line. Also, he's gotta maintain a high efficiency scoring. Being able to take advantage of his shots, the pick and pop. He's at his best when he slashes the basket, beating and those backdoor cuts and slants that obviously has been opening up a lot in the Knicks winning streak, particularly winning through Karl-Anthony Towns. But also, he's going to have to provide some kind of two-way insurance. And basically, with OG Anunoby coming off the hamstring, he is probable for game one, and so more than likely he will play, particularly with all the extra rest time. Bush is going to have to provide the same two-way play that he's been providing in
Yep.
all these absence, particularly game three and four, where he was able to take advantage of his offensive opportunities, but also maintain the defensive intensity and energy on the other side of the court to help the Knicks out. So it's an interesting series. We look at how many wing players the Knicks have that they can throw at Donovan Mitchell and James Harden respectively. But you gotta believe that Mikal Bridges, because of his length, because of his athleticism, is going to get a big chunk of Spider to open up this series, and especially as the series progress.
One thing that was interesting, and there's some stats that have been doing on this, in the three games that they played this year, Mikal Bridges had 72 possessions where he was the primary defender on Donovan Mitchell. He was 7 of 20 from the floor, 0 of 6 from behind the arc, a stat that's really impressive. But note, they only played against James Harden once in those three games. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Okay, let's move on to well, it's New York. It's a little hot outside, so the Bodega Cats are out there and running. And Jay, That leads you to the stat watch for short in this segment about Karl-Anthony Towns.
Yeah, the Bodega Cats may be running, but the Knicks cat is passing. Through the first three games of the Knicks first round series against the Hawks, Karl-Anthony Towns averaged 21.3 points per game on 12.3 field goal attempts per game and shooting splits of 56.8% from the floor, 60% on his twos, 50% from three on 4 attempts a game, and he's perfect on all 16 of his free throw attempts. He averaged 11 rebounds and 3.3 assists, and the Knicks trailed Atlanta 2-1, losing games 2 and 3 after winning game 1. Then head coach Mike Brown made a dramatic change to the Knicks offense. Instead of asking Towns to shoot more and thus continuing a 2-season-long narrative about how gauging the Knicks center's involvement or lack thereof was based on how many shots he did or did not take, Brown actually asked Towns to make his involvement in the offense about how many shots he created for his teammates instead of how many he'd create for himself. And it worked, as the Knicks haven't lost since, going 7-0, knocking out the Hawks and the Sixers on their way to the Eastern Conference Finals. Over this 7-game postseason win streak, Towns is averaging 15.7 points per game, 9.6 rebounds, but 8.0 assists in just 26.3 minutes per game. Now, that's partly due to foul trouble. He's averaging 4 personal fouls per game, and partly because of the number of fourth quarters he's been relaxing on the bench due to the Knicks blowing out their opponents by an average of 26.4 points per game. But per 36 minutes, he's averaging a triple-double, 21.5 points per game, 13.1 rebounds, 11 assists. Since Brown's adjustments against Atlanta in Game 4, Towns has averaged 99 touches per 100 possessions per second spectrum. In the 4-game sweep of the Sixers in round 2, that number climbed to 103 touches per 100 possessions. During the regular season, here's some context for you, Towns only averaged 83 touches per 100 possessions as he struggled to get comfortable as more of the hub of the offense that Brown wanted him to be. It's almost as though a switch got flipped and Towns suddenly got more comfortable with being the primary facilitator of the Knicks offense, handling the basketball in the high post, the low post, even off drives. And since then, Towns has been one of the best players in the playoffs. Here's some context about those 11 assists per 36 minutes over these last 7 games. The single-season record for a big man for assists per 36 minutes is held by, no surprise, 3-time MVP Nikola Jokic at 11.1. During the regular season, per second spectrum, Towns took a shot on 26% of his touches. During the 7-game winning streak in the postseason so far, that rate is down to 15%. On the flip side, he passed on 61% during the regular season. During the 7-game winning streak, that rate jumped up to 71%. The best passing season of his entire career, 2022-23 with Minnesota, when he notched an assist on just 8% of his touches. During this 7-game winning streak, that rate has more than doubled to a slightly more than 16%, which works out to an assist for every 6 touches. For context, Second Spectrum has been tracking assists per touch since the 2013-2014 season, and no player, not Jokic, not assist machine point guards like Chris Paul or Rajon Rondo, has come remotely close to averaging 1 assist for every 6 touches over a full season. Yes, Karl-Anthony Towns rarely shoots now. His field goal attempts per game has dropped down to 7.9 over these last 7 games, and he's had double-digit shot attempts only twice. He had 10 in Game 4 versus Atlanta and 11 in Game 1 versus Philly. But he hasn't been this involved in the Knicks offense all season, nor has his performance ever reached this high of a level. The big key to the success of Mike Brown's offensive tweak is that Towns is looking to pass at every opportunity. His drop in field goal attempts per game is because he's choosing his teammates' shot attempts over his own, not because the Knicks are failing to get shots for him. And the Knicks' chances of bringing home the Larry O'Brien trophy for the first time since 1973 are all the better for it.
The Eastern Conference Finals could be very interesting, just considering the fact that this team has really changed its momentum, especially offensively. Not counting garbage time, they have a offensive rating of 137.9, which is the best rating of any team in that span of the last 7 games by over 12.3 points. This is just a point differential machine right now, but we'll see what happens.
Hmm.
Again, it's very rare to have a team. And also, by the way, with Towns, this is third straight conference finals. Remember, he was in the conference finals in 2024 against Luka Doncic and the Mavericks when he was over in Minnesota. So he has the experience. That's one thing that's going to be very interesting in this series because a lot of experience on both sides of the ball when it comes to playoff games. The experience doesn't really extend to conference finals for my player to watch because as of tomorrow, he'll be making his first ever conference finals game in what is now season number 9. But congratulations, Donovan Mitchell. He needed to do a lot, as Anthony said, in that game 7. Credit to
Hmm.
Jared Allen, who's had 2 monster game 7s, by the way, and Evan Mobley, who played about as good as I've ever seen him in a playoff game. But he's had 77 career playoff victories. He's my Cavalier to watch, by the way, and multiple playoff games of 50 and 40 points. But finally, in game 7, he did everything. And he also did it with 8 assists. That's the most he's had in any game, regular season or postseason, in 2 months. Last time he did it was 11 against Dallas in March 15th. He had 26 points and 0 turnovers in 31 minutes. That's the key. This team needs to keep the ball. And if Donovan Mitchell doesn't turn the ball over, the team is going to have a result. They basically didn't need anything resembling of what James Harden does out there. James Harden was the 5th leading scorer last night on the Cleveland Cavaliers as he had his 3rd consecutive game 7 in single digits. It didn't matter. And what's going to be interesting is Mitchell, we talked about his numbers with Bridges that aren't good, but he still had 29.3 points per game in 3 games versus the New York Knicks this season, went 2-1 against Cleveland during the regular season. Cleveland has been a juggernaut, and I don't know if it's a good juggernaut. And it looks like we have a winner there, thank God. It looks they've been a very interesting juggernaut in this postseason. And watching Cleveland play, I'm very interested to see how much of the offense they run around Mitchell, they run
Hmm.
through Mitchell, and what's the shot selection going to be in that series? Because I still think James Harden is as dangerous of a player out there. They did very well in the one game during the regular season in February. Knicks weren't at their best at that point, clicking wise, but they still won on a Tuesday night in February back in against Cleveland by 15, I believe, on the road. So, but these teams have played very good games throughout the season. They've really been, again, the 2 teams we expected at the beginning of the season to be here are here now. And if Donovan Mitchell just turns on the Jets and performs like one of the 5 or 6 best players in the league, the Knicks are going to have their hands full. But again, it's very interesting. This is going to be a rest versus rust series. You got a team that's been
Yeah.
playing and hasn't played a game since last Sunday versus a team that has played every other day for the last 10 games and will continue to play every other day as this
Yeah.
series goes on. It's a very interesting scenario that we have in there with the Knicks, one that we'll see if they can keep lightning in the bottle. Anthony, I know you want to kind of respond on this one.
Yeah, one of the key things is going to be the next step or come off the bench. And I mentioned all the guys that can throw at Donovan Mitchell. The Cavaliers only go bring me like 8 deep. And they really shortened, like Kenny Atkinson really shortened his bench in that semifinal series against Detroit. And you got to wonder at some point, and it's a question we may ask with San Antonio as well, how much is the wear and tear is going to catch up? Has this series kind of limits on a little bit
Hmm.
because keep this in mind, the Knicks has had so much time off, but they're a veteran team. I mean, I think the rest issue hurts younger teams because when you're a young team, you want to keep playing, you want the momentum, you want to just get back out there. When you are a veteran team, you might have some dings and bruises. You like the idea of the rest and the fact that just on the basketball guys kind of work in Knicks' favor. This is the 3rd straight series when they have home court advantage,
Which
and
is
the
rare
team
as
that
a
just
three seed, you almost will never get that. It never
yeah,
breaks
Right.
that way, too.
and the fact that you have a team coming off a second straight 7 game series coming to New York. By the way, welcome home, Donovan Mitchell. He's the Westchester County local, but
Hmm.
you have that coming in. The Knicks depth and Mike Brown's willingness to kind of go 9, 10 deep at times. And you think about this, even Jeremy Shohan, who hasn't gotten but so much playing time, and and some of these other bigs that the Knicks can throw at Jared Allen and Evan Mobley could come into a factor as well, because now the Knicks have fouls that they could throw out there. If Karl-Anthony Towns do have the occasional foul trouble, which he's going to have,
Very
or if they're going
occasional in
to,
this series.
or if the idea of a hacker miss comes into play. I do think that Mike Brown has some more chess pieces to play with right now, but again, Donovan Mitchell he's a different breed. I mean, he can win it. He can take over a series. So it is going to be an interesting matchup. If you're the Cavs, you want to steal game one. That might be your best chance to take a game in Madison Square Garden, or a team that's coming off of an 8-day rest. Madison, you're going to have to do it in game one. Otherwise, the Knicks continue to roll on. It might be uphill trending for Cleveland, even when they go to Ohio for games 3 and 4.
And I know that the backcourt matchups are the marquee matchups. You got Brunson, you got Harden, you got Mitchell, you got marquee guards here. But what's interesting to me is the front court matchup. Jared Allen and Evan Mobley are a type of front court tandem the Knicks haven't had to really deal with too much in the playoffs to this point. Boston's undersized. The Sixers have really one legitimate big man. And now you come into you're going up against a team that legitimately starts two bigs. I think the key thing for that matchup, in order for Towns to be able to continue to do what he's been doing, regardless of which one he's matched up against, OG Anunoby has to be out there to take attention from the other. Because y'all remember the way OG was scoring at a clip, he required, you had to put a body on it. You had to know where he was at all times, because he was not only just doing his usual cutting to the basket and getting his shots that way. He was knocking down threes at a legitimate clip, forcing defenses to go out and guard him. So if he's not available, or he's limited on a pitch count, if you will, how does that change the rotation dynamic? And how does that change the matchups? And does it make it harder for the Knicks to spread the floor to allow Towns to pick apart a defense? Or is he going to be less able to do that because now you're able to potentially throw double teams at him, throw double teams at Brunson, because you don't have that space, the spacing that Anunoby has been supplying on the offensive end.
A lot of cross matchups in this series.
Yeah. And last night they went for 44 points. The combination of Allen and Mobley, 44 points, 19 rebounds. Going to be very interesting, though. Remember, they have faced this team before in the playoffs 2 years ago. In the 3 years, I'm sorry, 3 years ago. Thank you. In the conference quarterfinals, and did a number on them. Was not the greatest series for Jared Allen. We'll see what happens.
No.
I'm very intrigued to see how this is going on.
Indeed.
We do have one game that's going to be going down to the wire that we're going to be talking about right now. So have fun with this one. In the Western Conference, more specifically the Midwest of America, we find the other conference finals. That's between the San Antonio Spurs and the Oklahoma City Thunder. 64 and 62 wins between them respectively, which makes them the NBA's two best teams in the regular season, and the first time two 62-plus win teams beat in the playoffs since the last championship for Michael Jordan back in 19.
Wow.
The last dance.
Chicago Bulls and the Utah Jazz.
Wow.
Insane. These teams are no strangers to each other in this conference finals. They met back in 2012 and 2014. That was Tim Duncan versus Kevin Durant. This is Victor Wembanyama versus Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I have a feeling it won't be the last matchup between these two either in the conference finals. Let's look at this from both sides. Jay, the Thunder currently tied, currently unblemished this postseason. What player has surprised for you? And it could be in a good or bad way, but for the Thunder, this is a great one, at least before this game.
Yeah, the pleasant surprise coming out of the second round for OKC has been AJ Mitchell. It's not easy to replace an all NBA and all defense shooting guard, especially one who is the second best player on a defending champion looking to repeat. But that's exactly what second year shooting guard AJ Mitchell has done, averaging 18.8 points per game, 4.9 assists, and 4 rebounds on 47% shooting from the floor, 36.1% from 3 on 4.5 per game, and 89.3% from the line on 3.5 attempts per game. Those are his shooting splits over the first 2 rounds. And he was doing all this while Jalen Williams has missed the past 6 games with a hamstring injury. That would be the all NBA and all defense shooting guard he's replacing. SGA has led OKC in scoring in the playoffs. No surprise, 29.1 points per game on an effective field goal percentage of 54.7% and a true shooting percentage of 63.1%, which is the most efficient he's ever been in his 5 trips to the postseason. OKC has averaged 124.6 points per 100 possessions in his minutes. But with the emergence of Mitchell, and to a certain extent Chet Holmgren, the Thunder have averaged 126.2 points per 100 possessions when SGA has been off the floor, despite not having Williams, which is a stark departure from how the offense struggled with SGA off the floor during the regular season, where they averaged just 114.9 points per 100 possessions. OKC's always believed in Mitchell, but the series against the Lakers forced him to step up, and he did, averaging 22.5 points per game, most of that inside the arc, where he shot 66.7% on 12 two-point attempts per game, along with 3 boards and 6 assists, not to mention 1.8 steals. He had 28 points in the 115-110 game 4 win, including 10 in the fourth quarter, where he and SGA took turns running ISOs to close out the series. It was a huge reason OKC was able to score 125.4 points per 100 possessions against the Lakers, despite the overabundance of attention LA's defense paid to SGA and OKC having to play without Williams. Here's some context for that points per 100 possessions mark. Denver led the NBA in points per 100 possession during the regular season. Their mark was 121.2. Until Williams returns to his all-NBA form, Mitchell will be number 2 on the Spurs scouting report, and how he responds will be telling, especially against a San Antonio team that had the Thunder's number in the regular season. They beat OKC 4 times in 5 regular season meetings, 3 of them by double digits, largely due to a defense led by Defensive Player of the Year, Victor Wembanyama, that allowed just 109.2 points per game over those 5 games, including 109.2 points per 100 possessions in those 5 games, including just 99.6 points per 100 possessions in Wembanyama's 126 minutes on the floor against the defending champs. That defense has been the NBA's best in these playoffs so far. Now, Williams has declared himself healthy and ready to go against the Spurs in Game 1, and he was off the Thunder's injury report as of last Thursday, which is huge for OKC, as they'll need all hands on deck regardless of whether or not San Antonio throws a defensive kitchen sink at SGA like the Lakers did. Theoretically, having both Mitchell and Williams available to play big minutes should make things easier for each of them, as Mitchell's emergence ideally puts Williams in position to be more of an off-ball scorer with less pressure to be an on-ball playmaker, which would allow him more time and energy to be a disruptive force on the perimeter for OKC's number 1 ranked NBA defense in the regular season. The Thunder became the 14th team to sweep the first 2 rounds of the NBA playoffs since 1982. 7 of those teams made the NBA Finals. 6 of them took home the Larry O'Brien Trophy. A big reason for that has been their depth, and Mitchell is the prime example of just how deep this OKC team is. SGA, who is now, as Rabbi said, a back-to-back NBA MVP, has been double-teamed this postseason at a rate heretofore unseen in his postseason career, which has forced Mitchell to shoulder the offensive burden, much like the player he's been filling in for in Jalen Williams. And if A.J. Mitchell can continue to play at this level, even with the return of Williams, instead of having just 1 secondary scorer and playmaker, OKC will have 2. And against the Spurs' backcourt depth, that will be huge as the Thunder attempt to repeat as NBA champs.
And of course, because life is so weird, A.J. Mitchell has actually done very well tonight. He's at a plus 13. It's only we shot the ball 4 times, but Jalen Williams is 21 points. I would say he's back. 9 from 18 from the field. So I would say he's back, as that game might be over by the time Anthony makes this point. So Anthony, when the Spurs have lost, it's either been A, really close, or B, because Wemby just decided I'm not going to be on the floor the entire game, whether it be an elbow or a concussion. They've only lost 3 times this postseason, and 2/3 of that is because of Wemby being off the floor. Give me a surprise, good or bad for San Antonio. Actually, 2 out of 4 times, but who's counting? And no, 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3.
Yeah, well, Wemby being on the court and not
I think
being
that's
thrown
the
out of the
biggest. I think
game.
it's the biggest factor. But what's the second
By far.
biggest factor?
Well, I'm looking at Keldon Johnson. I mean, he's the rated NBA Sixth Man of the Year award winner for this season. 13 and a half points in the game and 5 rebounds. He's a surprise for all the wrong reasons because his numbers has been way down throughout this postseason. Just a shade above 8 points a game. 3.7 rebounds, 1.2 assists, and 18 and a half minutes a game to the first 11 games to the postseason. Now, he's had his moments, obviously. In the first round, he really struggled against Portland's defense. Did knock down back-to-back three-pointers in that cover behind win for San Antonio in game 4 of that series. Spurs win that series in 5. And struggled pretty much throughout the Minnesota series. However, did have the big game 5, 21 points in 22 minutes off the bench, 8 of 11 shooting from the floor. And if the Spurs are going to win, he's going to have to be an anchor this bench unit. I mean, you think about this. Dylan Harper had to move into the start lineup tonight because De'Aaron Fox was ruled out of tonight's game before tip-off. So obviously that weakens the bench. He's going to have to be a guy that could come in and give you some kind of offense tonight. 13 points on 4-9 shooting, plus minus a 3. But all these guys scored some efficiency too. Knocked down a couple of threes. Didn't really quite do a whole lot much else in the second half of this game. Got to be a versatile two-way player, provide some defense. Particularly when you have Alex Caruso come onto the court. And we've seen with his time with the Lakers and with OKC how much of a disruptor Caruso could be on both ends of the floor, offensively and defensively. Offensively, he can knock down threes and obviously be a playmaker. But defensively, he's such a presence in a net. And when you have the Spurs playing time with virtually no point guard to speak of, that's a big taking care of the ball and being able to give some kind of firepower off the bench is a big deal. So he's going to have to really step it up in this series. And San Antonio is going to move on to the NBA Finals.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's going to be very interesting just to see how this game is, as it is now tied at 101.
I would like Tarico. I want 7 games in this.
Hell yeah.
We
all do.
I won 13 games of this. As I said before, very simply, it's not going to be enough to tell who's winning. So let's get to my X Factor, who on both sides. We'll start with the Spurs, just because we just mentioned them. And ironically enough, it's a St. John's boy, one of 2 that have been making impacts this postseason, along with Dennis Jacobs from Detroit. But Julian Champagnie has been doing a very good job at the starting lineup, really helping out the Spurs, just having the offense flow. They have a very deep starting lineup, and even without Dylan Fox, everybody tonight on the Spurs and that starting lineup has gone for double digits. Champagnie being the least amount with 11. But he's a guy who, number one, made A-Rod pretty much physically sick when he hit a three-pointer right in front of him in Game 6 against the Timberwolves. Always enjoy that. And then also is just a three-point machine. Had 3 3-pointers in tonight's game. Multiple 3-pointers in every game this postseason, except for Game 4, that being the Wemby game, where he got ejected early in the game with throwing an elbow. This is just a very good team when they just really flow through Champagnie. This is a excellent team that you could see. It had 18 points in the series clinching victory against Minnesota last Friday, 4 triples in that game for the first time since Game 2, the second round series. But has done it 3 times this postseason. He has just been, and he also was almost good for 2 steals in almost every single game that he is in. He is a force out there, and it's almost like a pick your poison with the Spurs starting lineup. Wemby is the alien, but you got Castle, you got Harper. By the way, great job by the Spurs in that getting the second pick in the draft this year, and just getting great draft picks like Champagnie in I think the end of the first round or early second round when they did it last year.
Second.
Was early second. Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the other side of the court, and that's the Thunder. And boy, this is a good pick. Anthony was mentioning all of the picks because of Alex Caruso, who, by the way, should always be the answer to who was the X factor in any series in
Yeah,
whenever he is on the
regardless of
court.
what uniform he's wearing.
He's aiming for his third NBA Finals since 2020 in this series. But tonight he has been just an offensive beast. 27 points, 10 of 15 from the field. Really has helped out what has been a terrible shooting night for Gilgeous-Alexander, 5 of 18, and really he is the top scorer right now for that team. He is the definition of just a pest. He even was pestering LeBron James during the series against the Lakers, basically accusing him of illegal defense a bunch in there and said to sit down and get some rest. You gotta love Alex Caruso. I don't know if him and LeBron have any good special relationship, but Alex Caruso doesn't care. It's playoff time. He is a guy who attacks slow defenders. He is a player on a team with Lou Dort, who is becoming one of the biggest, I wouldn't say goons in the NBA, but close to that. Cason Wallace, who has been a perimeter defender. Isaiah Joe, who is very good in there. You just have so many players on this team that are just pests out there. But again, as shown tonight, Caruso can still be an effective scorer off the bench for you and still get you a good amount of time out there. I don't like the fact that he was only +3 and all of that time too, because if I want Alex Caruso out there, I want him to be a plus on the court at all times. I want him double-digit scoring is almost just a bonus for me. But Alex Caruso is the ultimate glue guy of a team in the postseason. So while the Spurs just do it with that starting lineup and some semblance of a decent bench, Oklahoma City has depth on depth on depth. Yep. And Alex Caruso is really the definition of the bench of this team.
7 of 11 from beyond the arc tonight, Rabbi, and he's done the job on the D. 1 steal, 2 blocks. Yes. And yet, yes, he is only +3. Ironically enough, AJ Mitchell has the best plus-minus for the Thunder tonight. He's +14 in his 26 minutes played tonight.
Yeah, by the way, big play towards the end of the game on Wembanyama's attempted game winner. They were getting a piece of of Wemby's dribble initially, and Chet Holmgren coming over to cleaning up on the block. By the way, off topic, does anybody wear white at home in the playoffs anymore? Like, what's going on?
No.
Am I watching the NHL, the NFL here?
They just don't care. It just isn't the same.
All right, kids, we're going to move on to the battle for Lord Stanley's Chalice. And as we mentioned before, let's flip our sides, even though we now know the Final Four in hockey, but we'll start with the West. On the West side of the country, the last 2 Stanley Cup champs that haven't been from the state of Florida since the pandemic battle for the Clarence Campbell Bowl, which may or may not be touched when it's actually won. I'm sure you can put a bet on that in a predictive market somewhere. The Colorado Avalanche and Vegas Golden Knights have 749 miles between them, but will be very, very close over the next 2 weeks, starting on Wednesday. All right, time for me to do my John Tortorella mention. Ant with the coach, John Tortorella, had all of 4 regular season games with Vegas under his belt. That's it. Who is the player to watch from the Golden Knights going forward?
Yeah, we're going to talk about what happened with the Golden Knights in this little layoff. I'll let you handle that one, Rabbi. But Mitch Marner is the guy I'm going to be focusing on for the Golden Knights, and he is leading it. He's the leading scorer in the NHL postseason by far. 18 points, 7 goals, and 12 assists in the 12 postseason games for the Golden Knights. In Game 6, obviously, I don't know if you saw the highlight, the between his own legs breakaway goal he scored that pretty much set the tone.
That was stick. That was some stick work, man.
A minute and 2 into the game, who beat Lucas Dostal, a guy who I talked about in the last show, who needed to step up. And then also Game 3, he had a hat trick. For first player in Golden Knights history to record 3+ points in consecutive playoff games. In the first round against Utah, he had 7 points, 2 goals, 5 assists, and leading the Golden Knights coming back from 2-1 down in that series to win 3 straight games in that series and closing out to win that series 4-2. Here's the thing: 7 goals, 11 assists, 18 points, a plus minus of 11, going into the Western Conference Finals, and now he gets the best team in hockey all regular season
Yep.
in the Colorado Avalanche. He's gonna have to be he's gonna have to lead the forefront as far as even strength production. The Avalanche are just really good defensively. You know, you have the stellar goaltending. Marner's going to have to continue to just shoot away and take it and be aggressive offensively. He's going to have to captain a power play as well as do the stick work and the defense on the special teams. But one of the things too is, and he's going to have to match your boy Jay. You're going to be talking about him next. Nathan McKinnon. I like the match with speed for speed. I mean, this is one of the marquee matchups between in this going into this series. But if you notice this is an interesting stat. In 12 games, Marner has 7 goals and 11 assists, and that was the 18 points. And 70 career playoff games with the Toronto Maple Leafs, he has 13 goals and 50 assists to go to 63 points. Now, obviously, John Tortorella, I've made no mention of much of a bit of a jerk he is at times, but he's a great coach. He gets the most out of his players, and you see that he's playing faster, he's playing freely. He's not playing with the weighted expectations that obviously playing with the story of Richardson's franchise, like the Toronto Maple Leafs, tends to come with. And he's been lifestyle, he's been money for the Golden Knights, but again, it's an inevitable tall task going into the Western Conference Final, starting Wednesday night. Am I correct?
Yes, it starts Wednesday
yeah,
night.
Wednesday night against the President's Cup trophy winners and a guy with. And Jay, I'll set you up with a superstar stud of their own on the other side of that ice.
Go ahead.
I mean, that would be Nathan McKinnon. And I know this is a captain obvious choice, but Nate the Great is on a mission. He put up a 116-point regular season last year, 32 goals, and an NHL leading 84 assists for an Avs team that put up 102 points, only to go out in the first round in 7 games to Dallas. 2 of those games were losses in overtime, despite 7 goals and 11 points from McKinnon. This season, he is bound and determined to bring Lord Stanley's chalice back to the Mile High City. Colorado's #1 center has scored 14 goals in his past 16 playoff games. He has a 6-game goal streak this postseason, 1 away from tying the team's playoff record of 7. He has 12 points on 7 goals and 5 assists over that 6-game span, and he leads the Avs in scoring this postseason overall with 13 points on 7 goals and 6 assists, heading into the Western Conference Finals, making him the front runner for the Conn Smythe Trophy. McKinnon is one of the best in NHL postseason history in terms of per game scoring. He's 9th among active players with 138 career playoff points, and his 1.44 points per game average this postseason raised his career mark to 1.33, which is 5th all time behind some guys you may have heard of. Wayne Gretzky, 1.84, Mario Lemieux, 1.61, Connor McDavid, 1.53, and Leon Draisaitl at 1.48. Among the 432 players in NHL history who have played at least 100 career playoff games, McKinnon ranks 4th in goals per game, 0.60, behind Lemieux's 0.71, Mike Bossy's 0.66, and Maurice Richard, the Rocket, who had a rate of 0.62, and he's slightly ahead of Gretzky, who checks in at 0.59 goals per game. I came across some next-gen goal-scoring stats from McKinnon that lend some insight into just how lethal he is with the puck on his stick. During the regular season, en route to winning the Maurice Rocket Richard Trophy as the NHL's top goal scorer with 53, McKinnon was among the top forwards in all 3 major shot locations. Mid-range shots on goal, he was in the 99th percentile. Long-range shots on goal, he was in the 98th percentile. And high-danger shots on goal, he was in the 96th percentile. He was also insanely good lighting the lamp at even strength, leading the NHL with 42 goals and 97 points, which is the most even strength points in a single season since Jaromir Jagr had 95 back in 1995-96. The Avalanche, the President's Trophy winners and number one seed in the Western Conference, led by those 7 goals from McKinnon, which are tied for third most in these playoffs, are the 7th team in playoff history to have 17 players score a goal through the team's first 9 games, 12 forwards, 5 defensemen. 10 of those players have at least 2, which tied an NHL record for the most in a single series with the 2025 St. Louis Blues, first round, 2019 Boston Bruins in Stanley Cup Final, 1993 Los Angeles Kings in the division semis, and the 1988 Bruins in the Stanley Cup Final. That scoring depth has been huge for Colorado through the first 2 rounds, especially with the injury bug hitting them hard. Forward Artturi Lehkonen and defenseman Sam Malinski each missed the final 2 games against Minnesota with upper body injuries. Defenseman Josh Manson missed 4 games with an upper body injury before returning in Game 4 against Minnesota. And then there's Norris Trophy candidate Cale Makar. The Avs' number 1 blue liners played every game of the postseason, but has absorbed a ton of big hits. He did not practice this weekend. The Avalanche will need all hands on deck if they're going to get past the Golden Knights and make it to the Stanley Cup Finals, but it all starts at the top with Nathan McKinnon. As he goes, so go the Avs, and like I said at the top, he is on a mission.
That team has been very outstanding. It's been really them and the team we'll talk about next, the Carolina Hurricanes, who've really just broken a lot of records this postseason and have been virtually untouched with 1 loss between both of those teams going forward. It would be very interesting to see what happens in this conference finals. And speaking of this conference finals, there always has to be a goalie matchup. So let's talk about it on both sides. We'll start with Carter Hart of the Las Vegas Golden Knights. Little controversial considering his actions with a 2018 Hockey Canada World Junior case. Hart was cleared after all of the charges of possible rape allegations. So because of that, he was signed by the Las Vegas Golden Knights earlier this season, and he ended up taking the job ahead of 2023 Stanley Cup winner Adin Hill after he returned after a lower body injury. He finished the season 6-0-0 with a .930 save percentage, and then he got to work in the postseason. He's been great. It's actually his 2nd time, by the way, in the postseason. He actually played 14 games for the Philadelphia Phillies during the pandemic Stanley Cup playoffs in Philadelphia Flyers for the pandemic 2020 Stanley Cup playoffs. But overall, he's doing really well. Now, what you're going to see about him in that game, in this series, is the fact that he has a small, contained style, has a number of clean looks from distance that go on the blocker side, some coming from the right wing, some coming from the right side. Hart is very effective with the stick, tries to cut off passes from below the goal line. If you could avoid that stick with a pop pass up front, the reach delays Hart's ability to cover the far side of the net. The Ducks in the last series, they've scored twice with a bunch of one-timers in that series. And not a lot of really goals to look at because Hart didn't really play a lot until really the postseason, but he's played every game since then. He has had he's had a couple of goals from higher in the zone this season. 14 goals have against him have come against shots against the grain, 18.4% tracked average. And then the first round against the Mammoth, 6 of the 18 goals that he had also had an against the grain element. So that's going to be very interesting to see what Carter Hart can do just going up against a barrage in every single game. And that barrage is going to be provided by the Colorado Avalanche. And the only reason why the barrage for this team, they've had the same offense for years and years and years. They just never really had the stability at goalie. So the easiest stability is to get 2 pretty damn good goalies out there. Ironically enough, both ending in Wood. We'll talk about Mackenzie. We're not going to talk too much about Mackenzie Blackwood. We'll talk more about the starting goalie, Scott Wedgwood. And both were drafted by the New Jersey Devils that came over here in 2010 for Wedgwood, 2016 for Blackwood. Actually, what's kind of funny also about Wedgwood is he's only started 4 playoff. He never actually started a postseason Stanley Cup playoff game until this year. And he's 33. It was 31-6-6 during the regular season with a 2.02 goals against average and a .921 save percentage. And after the Olympics, he was 11-2-1 with a .945 save percentage. And in eliminating the Kings, he had a .950 save percentage. He was pulled in game 3 against the Wild in this series. So Blackwood actually came in, won game 4, reinserted into game 5, the game where the Avs came back and took out Minnesota. And so let's talk about what you're going to see from Wedgwood. He only gave up 14 regular season breakaway goals, 60.3% average. That's a little more than you'd like. It usually should be around 10%. And the Kings got a bunch of good chances in the first round, but in terms of also getting deked into the goal, Wedgwood stopped one, but got beat a couple more times. In the game, now going to Blackwood, in that game 3, where the Avs had their only loss of the postseason, he stopped 12 out of 13 shots. In relief, Wedgwood in the first 7 games this postseason, 6-1, 2.45 goals against average, a 911 save percentage. Again, they split pretty much in the beginning of the season. They both combined to win the William M. Jennings Trophy, which goes annually to the best goaltending group out there. They allowed only 203 goals against each other this season. As I'm hearing Reggie Miller bleeding through my headphones right over here. Let's not do that. But overall, I do think this is going to be a very interesting series, considering Colorado's weakness in just the years since they won the Stanley Cup and Darcy Kempler left that team has been the goaltending, but so far so good this postseason. I'm expecting a lot of high scoring games though in this final series. It's in this Western Conference final series. It seems like this is going to be a series where the goalies don't have to stand on their head. They just have to kind of crouch a little bit and get a couple of saves.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens. All right. Now comes the series we were all dreading this whole entire show, just because we didn't know until showtime. Spoiler alert, me and Anthony didn't know until showtime that who we were going to talk about, the Canadiens or the Sabres. But as we move on to the Eastern Conference Finals, the teams fighting for the Prince of Wales Trophy. That's what the cool kids like to call the Eastern Conference Championship. It's the Carolina Hurricanes and Go Canada, still having a team out there in the Montreal Canadiens. Can't wait to set up the Montreal Canadiens part of this because it's not written on the script, but Jay has had this part of the script written. We've had this part of the script written pretty much since last week. The Hurricanes will be the first ever team with an 11-day rest going into game 1, which will be on Thursday. They are the first team to go 8-0 through rounds 1 and 2 of the postseason since 1987, and it's only happened 5 times in Stanley Cup playoff history. The Hurricanes have just built themselves a lanai or a hammock and have just sat in there and watched as many playoff games as they possibly could going in there. So with the backdrop of that,
they have been a canceling back at this point.
They could have at least done 3 or 4 round trips in there, but I don't know if Carolina wants to get any sun at this time of year. Jay, player to watch for the Hurricanes.
I settled on Taylor Hall last week, as Rabbi alluded to, but just because there wasn't a lot of stats, I only found like the really cool stat actually today, which I dropped in this afternoon, and I wrapped that up. Every postseason, we invariably hear about the player with the title of old guy without a cup, that grizzled vet who's been around forever but has yet to lift Lord Stanley's chalice in June. Colorado defenseman Brent Burns, with 1,579 career regular season games plus another 144 in the postseason over his 22-year career, is far and away atop the list. But Hurricanes veteran left wing Taylor Hall, with 989 career regular season games plus another 62 in the playoffs, is firmly in the conversation. His appearance last season in the Eastern Conference Finals with Carolina was the deepest playoff run of his career. Carolina is 8-0 in the playoffs and has allowed a total of 10 goals. They're the first team to sweep the opening 2 rounds since the NHL's current playoff format was established in 1987, and they are the 5th team in NHL history to begin the playoffs with 8 straight wins, and the first since the Edmonton Oilers in 1985. They were 9-0. Hall's play, along with that of his partners in crime on the Canes' number 2 line, which is generating 67.2% of the expected goals at 5-on-5, is a big reason why. Center Logan Stankoven has 8 points, 7 goals, and 1 assist. Right wing Jackson Blake has 11 points, 4 goals, and 7 assists. But Hall is their number one scorer, 12 points on 3 goals and 9 assists. He is scoring at a 1.5 points per game pace. That works out over an 82-game regular season to 123 points. He's also number one in drawing penalties. He's doing it at a rate of 1.86 per 60 minutes, which is far and away the best on the team. Now, Hall hasn't been this much of an offensive force since his heart-winning trophy season of 2017-2018 with the Devils, when he had a career high in goals, 39, assists, 54, and points, 93. But despite scoring 6 points in 5 games, 2 goals and 4 assists, he could not lift New Jersey out of the first round. A crushing disappointment, to be sure. This year, Hall is having the best postseason of his career, hands down, which is a pleasant surprise when you consider those regular season numbers, 48 points on 18 goals and 30 assists, plus solid, didn't remotely predict this type of postseason production. He already has more goals, assists, and points in 8 games than he had in 15 games last season, and his plus 10 is a career best by a mile, and only the second time in his career he's had a positive plus minus in the postseason. Now, you guys know I can't resist next-gen stats, so here's some from Natural Stat Trick. Hall is second on the team in expected goals for per 60 at 4.61, right between his line mates. Stankoven is first at 4.73. Blake is third at 4.54. They are the only Canes that are above 3.65 expected goals for per 60. On the flip side, Hall is also second on the team in expected goals against per 60 at 1.86. Once again, Stankoven is first at 1.82, while Blake is fifth at 2.12. What's that mean? If Hall played 60 minutes of ice time, the Hurricanes would be expected to score somewhere between 4 and 5 goals, while only allowing somewhere between 1 and 2. That is ridiculously good. With Hall as the driving force, the Canes' number 2 line has accounted for 14 of the team's 24 goals, and opponents have only managed 1 goal while that trio has been on the ice. Now, Canes head coach Rod Brind'Amour described what Taylor Hall has brought to the team through 2 playoff series sweeps, saying, quote, he wants to win. He's doing whatever he has to help the team. Carolina will need him to keep doing it if they're to have a chance to finally get him the Stanley Cup he's been hunting for 16 years.
All right, let's move on to the other side of the ball. And Anthony, I don't have the script in here, so how am I good? Let's see how I do. Anthony, the Montreal Canadiens are looking to become the 3rd consecutive finalists in the Stanley Cup Finals from Canada. The Oilers did it the last 2 years. The Canadiens are trying to do it this year. And after a spectacular 3-2 overtime win tonight to win Game 7 on the road again, they did it the series beforehand against Tampa Bay as well. Montreal is looking to help Canada restore some glory and get that Stanley's Chalice for the first time since 1993. Get me a player to watch off of the Montreal Canadiens. Have I given you enough time to find somebody?
Well, here's the thing, and I was talking to you about this before the show. When it was set for Game 7, Saturday night, yesterday afternoon, my niece gave me a great idea. She was like, you know what? Pick a player from each team, get some kind of information on there, and then as the showtime progressed, you can kind of pick one or the other to kind of lean on to see, okay, whoever wins, at least I have someone I can talk about.
Of course.
For Buffalo, I had Tage Thompson set up. Now, keep in mind tonight, okay, now I can throw that to the side. So for the Montreal Canadiens, who, by the way, is the last Canadian team to win the
They're the last ones to do it against the LA Kings in 1993.
Yes, they won in 5 games. Lane Hudson, the defenseman, and the second-year player, is the guy I was looking at. 2 goals, 11 assists coming into the Game 7 tonight in the first 13 games of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Fastest player, by the way, the third fastest defenseman franchise history to reach 10 playoff assists. Got another one tonight on the opening goal that kind of kickstarted the scoring in Game 7 tonight. The first half defender to do so since Aaron Dejan did in 1993, by the way. In the regular season, 18 goals to go. 18 goals. 128 assists, and 146 points across the two regular season games, regular 2 seasons. All 82 games this season is surpassing the 75-point mark. And this series in the playoffs, got his first playoff goal in the first round against Tampa Bay in that playoff series when registered 2 assists in that wild, wacky game 5. Well, Buffalo jumped out to an early lead, and Montreal came storming back to win that game. And again, the assist tonight to push it to 13 total. Against Carolina, and this is one of the things he has to do, is you think about Carolina's speed. I mean, he's a defenseman. He's gonna have to break through their forecheck. They do play a 2-1-2 four checking zone that really put the pressure on the puck handler. He's gonna have to figure out a way to get the puck in deep, maybe not overdo it as far as puck handling, along with the rest of the Canadians players. They were able to do a good job of matching the Buffalo speed tonight. You did see when Buffalo came back, they were able to get some open ice. They're going to have to reduce that greatly against the Hurricanes in the conference finals. Maintain the puck possession, playmaking. That's a whole team game, but with Lane Hudson, his ability to find open teammates, that's going to be a big game too. But also, he's going to lean into trying to be more aggressive in his shot making or too. Take some more shots. Even if we saw it over the overtime game winner, there's no such thing as a bad shot in this Stanley Cup playoff. It's all about getting the puck on net, and that's something that he's going to have to do. The great coach O'Ryan from D3, the Mighty Ducks, two-way hockey is going to be the key for Lane Hudson and the Montreal Canadiens defensemen across the board if they want to beat the Carolina Hurricanes in the conference final and hoist the Prince of Wales trophy at the end of the day. But it's a matchup of contrasting styles because Montreal, they want to be able to slow the tempo and slow the game down. Carolina is they do force they want to play fast, but they do it for the defensive side and puck pressure. So it's going to be a matter of which style wins out throughout the 7-game series.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Funny because Montreal actually won the Montreal has a Stanley Cup Finals appearance in 2021, but I don't know if I can call it the Western Conference Finals trophy.
Ironically enough,
it's so weird. It's so weird to say they're going for their first Eastern Conference trophy since 1993.
I have to ask this question, and this is a trivia. Are they the only franchise to win both conference championships?
I have to look into it. I'm not 100% sure about that, but that's a good question just because. But again, that's such a pandemic-coded question. It's so fucking.
Oh, hell yeah, it is.
It goes into it. And original 16-2, no less.
Yes, it's so weird. It's so weird. I was thinking about that last series because the Canadiens played the Lightning in the first round, and that's technically a Stanley Cup final. It was technically a Stanley Cup Finals rematch because of the fact that they played in 2020. Okay, 2021. I mean, all right. So let's move on. Let's first talk about the team that hasn't played since last Saturday and will not play until this Thursday. And that is the Carolina Hurricanes, which is very interesting, by the way, considering the fact that this is the round that has been their bugaboo. They have been to this round 4 times in the last 8 years under Rob Brind'Amour and have a grand total of 1 Western Conference Finals victory in here. But they're going to go into this as the prohibitive favorites because of what they did in the first 2 rounds. And one of the reasons for that is their 36-year-old goaltender, Freddie Anderson, who's leading all postseason goaltenders in goals against average. That's 112 and save percentage 950. And again, they are 8-0 in this playoff. So he's actually started 32 playoff games over the last 3 seasons for Carolina in net because they've been to this round multiple times before. So he has that. He started 4-1 this year. He actually has a great game with the win in Colorado, stopping 44 stops in that game and 3 shootout tries. But then over the next 2 months, he only won 1 out of his next 12 starts. He was 1-9-2 with a 3.73 goals against average and an 850 save percentage. His Christmas came in, but he actually started in goalie in the Olympics for Denmark in the 3 games. He had a 2.75 GAA and a 9.13 save percentage. And then he came back and he was much better. 9-4 after the Olympic break, and then closed the schedule with a 1.5 goals against average and a 9.42 save percentage. Anderson actually kind of reminds me a little bit of what Sergei Bobrovsky had did in that run with Florida late, and he's really become a solid veteran out there. He was going to have a little bit of competition from his 31-year-old backup, Brandon Bussey, starting the postseason run, but they went with Anderson, and right now it's becoming a very good choice. So what do you need then when you have a veteran on one side? You need a rookie, and that's what you get when you get to Montreal with Jakub Dobáš. He is Czech. He has been pretty good this postseason, not really the 6 goals that he gave up on Saturday night when he was up multiple goals, and he gave up 6 goals. That was the only time this postseason he's actually been pulled in any way in this postseason. Most of the other time he's had the most amount of time on ice that you could possibly have. He's had good games. He had some good games, a lot of 3-2 games in this series. He's actually played in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 3-2 games in the 14 games that he's played, either on the win side or the loss side. He hasn't had a series where he's given up any goals. He's always given up 1 goal a game. But tonight he had the second most saves he's had this postseason with 37 saves on 39 shots. Really hunkered down in that second and third period against Buffalo, because Buffalo was playing at its best. The fact that they got this game to overtime must have been a sigh of relief for Montreal. And then when a team who had 9 shots in a game 7 the time before and still won in overtime against the Lightning, that's pretty much a piece of cake when you. I'm sorry, he didn't win him in overtime, and he had 9 shots at goal and scored 2 of them. And then this game they win 3-2. And again, it's all about when you get into overtime, get that first shot on the goal that can get through the goalie. Montreal has been you have a very youthful goalie here in Dobáš. He hasn't lost 2 games in a row this entire year. After a loss this season, he is 18-2-2 with the goal. I'm sorry, he has lost, but after a loss this season, this postseason he hasn't lost 2 in a row, and he's 18-2-2 after a loss with 2.39 goals against average and a save percentage of 916. So he's looked shaky at times. He's a rookie. He's 24. Expected of him, but he was the 9th best goalie in terms of wins this season, 29, 10, and 4. Wasn't the greatest in save percentage, only 901, 22nd in the league, and his goals against average was 30th in the league with 2.78. But he's just been good enough to get the job done this postseason. And when you're going up against that behemoth of a team that Carolina has had, they haven't won all of their games handily. They've been in a lot of overtime games. The Philly series and Ottawa series were rough and tumble. Remember, they started the postseason fighting in that game against Ottawa and Game 1. They started this postseason literally throwing punches. But we're going to see what happens in this series between Carolina and Montreal. Again, we talked about it in the beginning of the show. We'll talk about it again at the end of the show. The ultimate rest versus rust question. We have a team that hasn't played in double-digit days against a team that has played every other day pretty much the entire postseason. The only amount of time that they haven't played every other day is they had a 2-game rest. They actually have a 2-game rest before Game 1. The NHL kind of did them a little bit of a favor there. But they have only really had 2 days off or 1 day off pretty much since Game 1 of the first round, which is almost a month ago, back on April 19th.
If I'm the trainer, I think I will invest in a lot of.
No, Anthony, go ahead and finish, man.
Go ahead, finish.
If I'm a trainer of the Montreal Canadiens, I think I'm going to invest in a lot of ice for the next couple of games.
And a lot of aspirin, a lot of Advil. Guys, I looked it up. 3 other teams besides Montreal have won both conferences: the Red Wings, the Blackhawks, and believe it or not, the New York Islanders.
Wow.
That's right. They were a Western Conference team at one point. But again, that's more the Campbell and Wales conferences. So
yes.
it's little different in that, but in the Eastern and Western Conference, it's very rare to see what we have. By the way, it looks like San Antonio is going to finally
Yeah, what a
win
game.
game one of that series. They're currently up with about 10 seconds to go, up 122-115 will be Oklahoma City's first loss
Of the
this
playoffs.
postseason.
Yeah.
And it is official.
It's
We're going to
official.
have a very, very interesting finals. We'll see what happens with the Knicks tomorrow night, and we'll
Yep.
see what happens in at least another 3 games between the Spurs and Thunder. But I have a feeling that it's going to be a lot more than just 3. But we'll see what happens. For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, I'm Steven Rabinowitz, longing to be the first person in this show's history to get made fun of in a Los Angeles Chargers schedule release video. We're still hoping. We're still hoping. I have a whole
life goals,
football
Rabbi.
season.
Life goals.
I have a football season to do it. I will get there. Make fun of me, both social media. I dare you. Anyway, like and subscribe our pages. YouTube on demand. YouTube.com/OnTheSportsLines on demand. Facebook.com/OnTheSportsLines live. And Jay to finish us off.
Yeah, our Twitter handle is at ONTH Sportslines, where you'll find a link to each new show, like tonight's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out. This week, I've posted a link to a story by Kurt Goldsberry of The Ringer, who takes an in-depth look at the ever-increasing number of NBA player games missed due to soft tissue leg injuries, such as the ones that affected Luka Doncic in each of the last 2 seasons. Has the evolution of the NBA game from one where most offensive moves were made off 2 feet to one where they're made off 1 foot the reason for the exponential increase in injuries such as calf strains from 18 documented cases in 2010-2011 to 60 cases last season to 86 this season? Goldsberry digs into the data that would seem to support that hypothesis. It's a well-researched piece and very much worth your time to check out, especially if a player on your favorite team has suffered such an injury this season.
And hopefully they all come back from it. We'll talk about that later on. We'll see you next time on the Sports Lines. Go Orange and Blue. One team, Anthony, not the other team. We will not talk.
No.
We will not talk about. We will not talk about the other. We will not talk about the other team. Damn you, Tyler Taylor. Damn you, David Bendar. Luckily, we won.
Good night, everyone.
Good night from all the Sports
Good
Lines.
night,
We'll talk to
everybody.
you next time.